In the meantime, the chairman of the Dangote Group, Aliko Dangote, has said that the plan the Dangote Refinery has in place that Nigeria will not need to import premium motor spirit by next month. Dangote said that the refinery, which has already started supplying diesel and aviation fuel in Nigeria, has the capacity to meet the diesel and petrol needs of West Africa and the aviation fuel demand of the entire African continent. The richest man in Africa spoke as a panelist at the Africa CEO Forum Annual Summit in Kigali. Highlighting how far the oil company has gone, Dangote expressed how they are focused in ensuring that the continent will depend less on importation in the nearest future. And now joining me on the news to discuss this further is partner at Olaniwun Ajayi LP, and that's Chukwuemeka Osuji. Chukwuemeka, a very good afternoon to you. Let's get started. I mean, one looks at this statement from Dangote and one asks, how realistic is Dangote's projection of Nigeria not needing to import premium motor spirits, PMS, by next month?
Thank you very much and good afternoon. I think in terms of what is realistic, it might be a bit difficult for those of us who are sitting on this side to tell. Pretty much it's for Dangote himself, who's running the refinery or whose company is running the refinery, to indicate, given the pace of production and how far they've ramped up the production capacity of the refinery, to then indicate how long it will take them to get to a level where we'll be able to attain that sort of self-sufficiency. So it's difficult to second guess that point. I think what is more relevant for me and for a lot of people, a lot of Nigerians, is the fact that first and foremost, that refinery is produced quite a good number of distillates. And at this moment, we then hear that in no distant time, we will then start producing sufficient volumes of PMS that will require us not to import. And that's good news in itself. Whether we actually get to 100% there in next month or in 2 months or in 3 months, what is more important for me is the fact that the refinery is producing, and at least there's something we can work with in terms of timelines.
All right, so fuel production, all right, and increased fuel production by the Dangote Refinery. But how would it then, let's talk about the effect of that on fuel prices within Nigeria and across West Africa. How might the increased fuel production by the Dangote Refinery affect, fuel prices?
Now, that's one very naughty point where a lot of Nigerians are still a bit concerned, because there are two things. One is having, enough product supply in the system to make sure that all the four queues we used to witness will be a thing of the past. But present, there's a very dicey situation, because you recall that even when we start producing fuel domestically, there are still a whole lot of other factors that impact on fuel prices. Now, those factors will continue to be there, even if it's to a reduced extent. So I think with time, the pricing might reduce a bit. But I dare say we can never go back to the earlier levels we used to see last year or 2 years ago. That's something that I think it's going to be difficult for us to get there. But I think if we get enough volumes, given, of course, we are no longer importing those volumes, and all those associated costs that go with importation will be reduced, we will begin to see an impact on pricing. But I must warn, I'm not sure it will get to where, in quote, Nigerians will want the pricing to get to, at least in the short term. But at least in the immediate term, there will be a slight impact on pricing, and perhaps gradually we'll then begin to see more reduced pricing.
And then what then will now be the potential economic benefits for Nigeria if it becomes self-sufficient in fuel production, all thanks to Dangote Refinery?
Oh, that's enormous. Speaking directly to the refinery itself, job creation on the back of that refinery itself is enormous. And of course, you must realize at the scale at which that refinery is operating, there are now significant feeder companies that derive value from that company. So, for example, those that are making supplies to that company, all the other companies that will be lifting products from those companies, haulage, logistics, terminals, pipelines, it's nameless. So in terms of the value chain, in terms of the value that can come out of that refinery alone directly, it's enormous. And of course, the revenue that refinery will earn, it's a good thing that refinery is in Nigeria. The fact that refinery is in Nigeria and presumably selling the products in Naira, that will, of course, from that point of view, help the country to alleviate some of the significant pressure and burden the forex which we've had over a number of years. So if that continues to happen, then of course government revenue will be adjusted. You might even begin to see a bit of impact on inflation, and then all the other inflationary pressures, including as it relates to transportation, that will begin to reduce. So I think from an economic point of view, Nigeria stands to benefit enormously from this refinery once we get up to full production.
And let's widen the scope of this conversation. Let's widen it this time and look at on the international stage. What impact do you foresee this happening? Foresee on international competitors when it comes to fuel production, the fuel production market?
Well, internationally speaking, at least as it impacts Nigeria, there's really not much of a competition. Because as you're aware, over the last couple of years, decade or so, our domestic production capacity plummeted so much that we were pretty much importing all that we needed. And unfortunately, we were not able to access very proximate West African or even African markets for our needs, because our neighbors weren't producing enough. Even if they had production, none of them had enough production to meet Nigeria's needs, even half of our needs. So in terms of that direct competition, I don't even see any competition. What will simply happen is that we will then step up to where we ought to have been. That's that pride of place where Nigeria will then begin to supply domestically and at the same time flood the West African and the broader sub-Saharan African market with products. So perhaps internationally speaking, the persons we were buying products from before, of course, they will have a loss because we no longer have to go to them. But I think I will look at it from a perspective of competition. I will look at it that this is now a new entrant to the market. And of course, the market is global. It's not just the Nigerian market. It's not even just an African market. And Dangote's strategy is a global strategy. So yes, one more entrant into the market, but there's still, sufficient market for Dangote to come in and then and sell its products without even needing to drastically shake the market share of other producers. But what would happen is all those who were looking to Nigeria as a source of export would pretty much have to face other markets because, of course, Dangote will, and then, of course, when our own domestic refineries, the modular refineries and the refurbishments come on stream, all that can then contribute to the self-sufficiency which we have been yearning for years now.
Many thanks so much for coming. I appreciate you for doing this with us, Chukwuemeka.
Thank you very much.